So let's start from the voice. When I'm reading, then the text is what gives my main message. But when I speak, then things are much more difficult. And in fact, the text is only a very small part of the message. People may actually not remember anything of what you said, but they will tend to remember how you said it. And I think maybe we've been in situations in which we said something and then there was a reaction from the person we were talking to that was not matching our message, or at least the message that we thought we were giving. Because maybe it's not about the person that we were talking to, but it might also be that the message that we actually communicated was not matching our intention because of the way we said it. Let me give an example of parameters that contribute to your message. I could say, yesterday I ate a risotto. Oh, how was it? Good. Second situation. Yesterday I ate a risotto. Oh, how was it? Good. Third situation. Yesterday I ate a risotto. Oh, how was it? Good. So you see that if I manage to communicate that we are in front of 3 different risottos. The first one is okay. The second one, well, I'm not so sure I want even to taste that. And the third one, well, that's delicious. So what changed in this? It's not the text. The text that I'm reading is exactly the same. What changed is the prosody, or how you say things. And there's different parameters in your voice. So there's the volume and intensity that can be high or low. It's related to how much air you actually use when you speak. And actually in a remote talk, there's nothing that I can do with that, actually, not much. I mean, I can scream near the microphone or go farther, but I mean, more than that, it's up to you to change the volume. However, it's important, especially, I mean, in a live situation, that your audience is able to hear what you're saying. Try not to speak to yourself. Don't speak also to the people in the first row. Pick a person at the back and talk to them, and then everyone else will also hear you. Second parameter is the intonation. You can use a higher or a lower pitch, and the tone is related with contracting a muscle. It has nothing to do with the volume or with the intensity or with how much air you use. It's rather how tense this muscle is, and then the higher the tone will be. So try to avoid speaking always with the flat intonation, because that's very boring. Number 3, speech rate. So usually that's how fast or slow you're talking, and that's measured in syllables per second. So we go from a very fast speech where you're talking about a lot of things, talking about dark energy, dark matter, gravity, self-acceleration, look at this plot, look at this other plot, and possibly nobody is actually following very much what you're saying if you're too fast. Consider, for example, the extreme cases of side effects in advertisements of medicines. They reach 9 syllables per second. That's really because they have to say it, but they don't really want you to hear what they're saying. The opposite is slow. 3 syllables per second in a baby talk, because I think like I am talking to a baby, because otherwise you will not understand, or I think you will not understand what I'm saying. Very slow. Talking live or remotely also changes a bit, I think, your speech rate. Maybe because your internet connection is not very good, there's maybe delays, overlaps with people asking questions. And so there is the tendency a bit to speak a bit slower. I'm trying actually to speak a bit slower remotely than I would do in a live situation. Enhancing contrast also in these cases can be done also with your voice. More important things can be slower and with pauses. And instead, if I try on some pieces to go faster, because I want to tell you a caveat that maybe we can discuss later. Silences. Have no fear of silences. They can be used to emphasize something. They can be used to give the audience the time to think about what you just said. Just be aware of them, because otherwise they become hesitations. And what I mean by silences is silent pauses. So I emit no sound. However, there's also other pauses. There's filled pauses where you actually, for example, make a vocalization. I'm sure that everyone here has either done or heard people saying, that's disfluencies. There's others, there's nasalizations, repetitions, people that repeat a word, while they are thinking about what they have to say next. Or a false start, they start with something, with a sentence, and then they rephrase it while speaking, while they're adapting to what they actually want to say next. Or there is something that I do a lot, for example, which is lengthenings. I talk with, say, I make a sound last for longer while I'm thinking of what I have to say next. Each of us does them, 1, 2, or even all of them. Are you aware of which one you do? Try to be aware of them, possibly reduce them, especially I think filled pauses and nasalizations, because they can be pretty annoying for the audience. But in any case, despite their name, also consider that they're not completely a bad thing. Actually, they are part of spontaneous speech. And it's normal to have some of them, because they show that you're thinking and not reading, which usually it's always a good thing. Try to vary some of the prosody of all these elements during your talk. Don't read just the slides, but give it your rhythm. That also explains why you have to prepare your talk in advance, loud voice. It's not enough to just go through your slides before. You have to really prepare it speaking loud. If possible, actually, it helps to register yourself and then maybe look at yourself afterwards. That also helps a lot to improve. Consider also that your voice will put you in a situation which is somewhere in between a dominant and subdominant situation. For example, your voice can be in a dominant situation. I can talk very slowly. I can use all the time that I want. I can put many silences, and I can think a lot about what I want to say or what I don't want to tell you. That's typical, for example, of people who are in power. Usually, for example, a dominant position or dominant speech is more in people who are at the government. They speak very slowly with all and lots of pauses. This can show confidence, but it also puts some distance with your audience. So it's not really advisable, especially at the start of the talk, because it might give the idea that you think you are in a higher role than your audience. On the other side, there is the opposition, let's say, the subdominant, where I talk very fast because I don't have much time, probably, less time than other people. I have many things to say and I really want to tell them. And so I will use fewer silences. Finally, there is body language. With your regard, look at the audience. Don't stare at one single person because that's creepy, but try to look at different people in your audience. If there's a comedy panel, if there's anyone, just look a bit to everyone. Preferably don't sit, because that also removes your body language. Of course, remotely it's basically impossible, but moving is okay, some moving. However, don't move all the time, because that's also very distracting. Try to find a comfortable position, be calm, and ready to say things that you believe are important. Of course, that's easier if you're relaxed, if you haven't prepared your talk up to 5 a.m. in the morning and you actually slept before your talk. Here I leave you some exercises that actually you can play with yourself, with your voice. You can try them and maybe with your friends or colleagues or with your family, and you can check whether the message that you give actually corresponds to your intention. I'll maybe just give an example. For example, in exercise 1, we remove entirely the text. There's only numbers, and you have to say them picking one of the intentions in brackets, and then the other person has to guess. So for example, if I say 12, 34, 23, 75, what intention was that among the ones? Anyone?
Resignation.
Resignation, exactly. Good. You can try that actually only with the voice, or even removing the video, or only with the video, removing your voice, and actually that should also work. Same thing in exercise 2, you can say, for example, good morning with different intentions, and then ask someone to guess what it was. Or in the third exercise, there is some text that actually is taken from one of your papers. I don't know if you'll recognize it. And you can try to test your voice, first reading it just using syntactic silences. So look at the really where there's a white space or a comma or a full stop, or try to emphasize the words in bold by either using a higher pitch or using silences. Those are two things that actually are used to emphasize words. And again, also in your voice, emphasize things based on contrast. For example, if I want to emphasize massive neutrinos, it's different than emphasizing massive neutrinos. And the question is, have other people worked already on neutrinos? Well, then in that case, you will probably want to emphasize that you have worked on massive neutrinos. But if nobody else has ever worked on neutrinos before, then maybe you want to rather emphasize that you have worked on neutrinos. It doesn't really matter if it's massless or massive, and so on.